Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be discussing Pirkei Avot, a 6-chapter book of the Mishnah for the Ancientsathon readathon, which is going on throughout the months of June. This is a yearly readathon here on BookTube. Pirkei Avot is found in the most siddurim. This is an Orthodox siddur, but it's also in all conservative siddurim. Siddur is Hebrew for prayer book. Unfortunately, the Reform movement doesn't have it, and I'm not sure about Reconstructionist Judaism or any other denominations, but anyway, it's traditional to study a chapter of this book every Shabbos at Sodat Shlishit, the third meal of Shabbos between Pesach, Passover, and Rosh Hashanah. Although some people stop at Shavuot, obviously it just depends on what your personal custom is or what your community does. And as I've mentioned several times back home in Albany, New York, we would do the ding-a-ling-a-ling hotline, as we called it. We would go around at Sodat Shlishit and say, ding-a-ling-a-ling, I really love this Mishnah, or I don't understand this, or I really disagree with what this rabbi is saying, or I'm confused, help me understand this, I want to discuss this with more people. And we'd all go around and study and discuss and debate it together. That's one of the things I love about Judaism. We have a very intellectually curious tradition. We don't just say, oh, I'm reading the Torah and that's just the way it is because I accept this is completely true, or I'll study the Talmud and I won't disagree with anything at all because, God forbid you question anything. No, it's very, very traditional for us to study, argue, and debate, and all the opinions of the rabbis are recorded in the Talmud and the Mishnah and the Gemara and the Zohar and such. It's not just, oh, this one person said one thing and therefore you should believe this, and we won't record any minority opinions. It's just saying, oh, these are all the different opinions and debates for the sake of heaven, and make up your own mind and do studying in your own generation. So anyway, this is just a really wonderful book. You don't really need an intensive hardcore studying class to understand this, unlike most other things of the Talmud and the Mishnah. And if you're not aware of this, the Mishnah is part of the oral Torah, the Torah Shebal Peh, which Judaism was primarily an oral tradition until Rabbi Judah the Prince, Yehuda HaNasi, started compiling it in the beginning of the 3rd century of the Common Era, because anti-Semitism is the world's oldest hatred, and because of extreme persecution in our people, he was worried, we might lose our precious oral tradition. So, it's time to start writing it down. And so anyway, these are the wonderful sayings of the rabbis in Pirkei Avot, and I'm not going to go into detail about, different orders and tractates and stuff of the Talmud and the Mishnah. That's a topic for an entirely different era, and I went through it and I bookmarked all the different things I liked. Obviously, there are many, many more wonderful chapters and lines and such that I didn't record, but I'm just going to try to keep this fairly short and sweet, and these were the ones that really stood out to me. And so anyway, chapter 1 famously begins: Moses received the Torah from Sinai and passed it on to Joshua, Joshua to the elders to the prophets, and the prophets passed it on to the men of the great assembly. They, the men of the great assembly, said 3 things: be deliberate in judgment, raise up many disciples, and make a fence around the Torah. And, particularly in the, unfortunately, in the modern day Haredi and Hasidic world, obviously not all communities, but many, they put fences around fences around fences. They're not just putting a fence around the law, which is meant to make it more difficult for you to transgress or be tempted to sin because, there's an extra stringency in place. But unfortunately, these people just put fences and fences and stringencies on top of other fences and stringencies, and they're kind of, losing sight of the original law and the purpose for observing it, which is very unfortunate. And so the second line: Shimon the righteous was one of the last men of the great assembly. He used to say, the world stands on 3 things: on Torah, worship, and deeds of kindness or loving kindness. And this was the song we used to sing in my original Reform Shul in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. We were taking out the Torah, Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Al HaTorah, the Al HaAvodah, the Al Gimilut Chasadim, and we just repeat that, and it's just something wonderful to remember. It's very sweet and simple. And the next one I wrote down is line 14, chapter 1. Hillel. This is a really, really famous line. You've probably heard this even if you're not Jewish yourself. Hillel used to say, if I am not for myself, who is for me? And if I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? And many people can relate to this sentiment. The next one is line 18. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said, the world endures by virtue of 3 things: justice, truth, and peace. As it is stated, administer truth and the judgment of peace in your gates. And that's a really, really lovely, wonderful sentiment. And now, oh, and by the way, there are little things you're traditionally supposed to recite before and after each chapter of Pirkei Avot. But again, that depends on your custom and such, but obviously that's like a whole like more complicated topic for another thing. I'm not really going to get into like community differences and like personal practices and such like that. And so chapter 2, I like the first I think, yeah, 6 mishnahs of the chapter 2. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, who compiled the oral tradition of the Mishnah, said, "Which is the right path that a man should choose for himself? That which is honorable to himself and brings him honor from man." And obviously this is very like androcentric. They weren't like really using gender neutral language at all in this era, but like when I can, I'll try to make it a little bit more gender neutral. "Be as careful in the performance of a seemingly minor mitzvah as of a major one, for you do not know the reward given for the mitzvot, the commandments. Consider the loss incurred in the performance of a mitzvah against the reward earned by its observance, and the gain derived from a sin against the loss that will follow. Reflect upon 3 things, and you will not come to sin. Know what is above you, an eye that sees, an ear that hears, and all your deeds are recorded in a book." And I really like the sentiment, like, you never know if like this like minor law you're following might be like super important to you personally or for like the world, or just like making destiny happen instead of like a major mitzvah. Obviously you should want to do all of them equally, but like sometimes like a seemingly minor mitzvah is like very very dear to you, and that's just more special and meaningful to God or for your own personal life than like the major mitzvot. So that's something really interesting to consider. And now number 2. Rabban Gamliel, the son of Rabbi Judah Hanasi, said, "It is good to combine the study of Torah with an occupation, for all the effort required by them both keeps sin out of mind, while all Torah study, not combined with work, will in the end cease and leads to sin. All who occupy themselves with the affairs of the community shall be engaged with them for the sake of heaven. For the merit of their ancestors assists them, and their righteousness endures forever. And upon you, says God, I will bestow great reward as though you had accomplished it all by yourselves." And this really kind of stuck out to me thinking about all these men in the Haredi and Hasidic community. Again, obviously not all of them, but unfortunately this is a big trend over the last few decades. They're just like full-time scholars. They're refusing to go to work. And in the past, let's say like pre-1950 or so, like rabbis and community leaders recognized like most men or women for that matter just, don't have the kind of like intelligence and capability and skills and such it takes to be like a permanent, like full-time scholar. That's a calling for a very select few people. And now we have like entire communities where men just sit around in kollel, adult yeshiva, all day long and studying while their wives have to go out and work and bring home the money and the like the food and stuff for their family. But again, that's a subject for another thing. But this is just a trend I really, really hate. Like, go out and get a job if you're not built to be like a natural scholar. That's not what men did in the old days at all. This is like a very current trend that is not, based in what historically the Jewish people were like. And so, number 3, be wary of those in power, for they befriend a person only for their own benefit. They seem to be friends when it is to their advantage, but they do not stand by a person in their hour of need. And again, this is like, who can't relate to this? And there are also other mishnayot throughout this, like saying, oh, don't befriend people in government, or be wary of those in power, or like be a good judge, or don't like assume guilt or innocence before you have all the facts. And what people in government, like people always joking, they're not sincere at all. They're just out for their own, like what they want. Number 4, he used to say, fulfill God's will as you would your own will, so that God may fulfill your will, as though it were God's will. Set aside your will because of God's will, so that God may set aside the will of others before your will. Hillel said, do not separate yourself from the community. Do not be sure of yourself until the day you die. Do not condemn your fellow person until you have stood in their place. Do not make an ambiguous statement which is not readily understood in the belief that it will ultimately be understood. And do not say, when I will have free time, I will study, for perhaps you will never have free time. And again, this is something really good everyone can relate to. And number 5 in particular, I like the last bit of it. This is one of the really famous lines, and I use this in one of my hiatus works in progress by, 2 young Shoah survivors who have just gotten liberated by the Red Army. And this one guy is like concerned he's like a human being again. And like his friend says like, no, we were humans because of what Hillel commanded us to do. And so anyway, he used to say, a bore cannot be sin-fearing, nor can an ignoramus be a chassid, one who does more than the strict letter of the law requires. The bashful person cannot learn, neither can the short-tempered teach, nor can anyone who is much occupied in trade become a scholar. And in a place where there are no humans, strive to be a human. And this is number 6. He also saw a skull floating on the water. He said to it, because you drowned others, they drowned you. And ultimately those who drowned you will themselves be drowned. This was really popular one at the Ding-a-ling-a-ling hotline. It was just so funny and eye-catching, and skulls don't really float, so this was really something exceptional. And I love the macabre and Halloween and stuff, and wearing skull and pumpkin and bat and stuff jewelry. So this particularly stands out to me. It's after my own macabre heart. And the next one I wrote down is number 10 in chapter 2. He said to them, "Go and see which is the good way to which a man should cleave." And Rabbi Eliezer said, "A good eye." Rabbi Joshua said, "A good friend." Rabbi Yosai said, "A good neighbor." Rabbi Shimon said, "One who considers the consequences of his actions." Rabbi Elazar said, "A good heart." Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to them, "I prefer the words of Elazar ben Arach to all of yours, for in his words yours are included." He said to them, "Go and see which is the evil path from which a person should keep far away." Rabbi Eliezer said, "An evil eye." Rabbi Joshua said, "A wicked friend." Rabbi Yosai said, "A wicked neighbor." Rabbi Shimon said, "One who borrows and does not repay. One who borrows from people is as one who borrows from God, as it is stated, 'The wicked one borrows and does not repay, but the righteous acts graciously and gives.'" Rabbi Elazar said, "A wicked heart." Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai said to them, "I prefer the words of Elazar ben Arach to all of yours, for in his words yours are included." They each said 3 things. Rabbi Eliezer said, "Let the honor of your fellow be as dear to you as your own, and do not be easily angered. Repent one day before your death. Warm yourself by the fire of the sages, but beware of their glowing embers, lest you be burnt. For their bite is the bite of a fox. Their sting is the sting of a scorpion. Their hiss is the hiss of a serpent. And all their words are like fiery coals." And it's just really wonderful. All these guys are saying, obviously good things to look out for, and good and evil. But their teacher says, this one guy his answers are better than all of yours, because his answer combines all of yours together. And that's just, again, another wonderful thing about our intellectual tradition that is just, so dear to me. And now we're going on to chapter 3. And the first one I put down is 1 and then 3. Akavya ben Mahal Lalel said, "Reflect upon 3 things, and you will not come to sin. Know from where you came, and to where you are going, and for whom you are destined to give an accounting. From where you came, from a putrid drop, and to where you are going, to a place of dust, maggots, and worms, and before whom you are destined to give an accounting, before the Supreme King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be God." And there's a tradition you should always carry 2 little slips of paper in each pocket, and one of them says from a smelly or a putrid drop I was created, and the other one says for my sake was the world created. When you're feeling really low and depressed and not sure of yourself, pull out the one that says, "For my sake was the world created." And when you're feeling on top of the world and totally cocksure and just being egotistical, narcissistic, whatever, pull out the one that says, "From a smelly drop I was created." And that'll really help you to get a more perspective on things. And it's just a really interesting tradition. And how is number 3. Oh, I love this one. This is a really popular one, and also kind of funny. There's a funny story I always remember about this one. Rabbi Shimon said, "Those who ate at one, 3 who ate at one table and did not speak words of Torah there, it is as if they had eaten of sacrifices to the dead. For it is said, indeed, all tables are full of filthy vomit when there is no mention of God. But the 3 who ate at one table and did speak words of Torah there, it is as if they had eaten from the table of God, for it is stated, 'And he said to me, this is the table which is before the Lord.'" And when I was in Amherst, this was a little bit after I had graduated college, but I went back to stay for a Shabbos, and my friends Sharon and Elise were also there, and we were studying Pirkei Avot after Soidat Shlishit, and we got to this, and Elise was laughing to everyone, "Oh, that was just us at a table of vomit," because we weren't studying Torah, but our Rebbitzin Zahava said, "Oh, you were talking about going to study it," so, turning a negative around into a positive, we technically were discussing Torah, even if we didn't really think we were. This is, one of my funniest favorite stories. And the next one from chapter 3 is number 11. Rabbi Elazar of Modin said, "One who profanes sacred things, who degrades the festivals, who publicly humiliates one's fellow person, who abrogates the covenant of our father Avraham, and who interprets the Torah in a manner contradictory to its true intent, even though that person may possess Torah and good deeds, they have no share in the world to come." And so that's a lot of people can relate to this regardless of tradition. These people who publicly profess to be so pious and just wonderful, great people, they're privately committing all sorts of horrible sins, cheating on their spouses and doing unethical business and just, being like terrible, horrible people. So you should like really judge people by the content of their character and not just think, oh, this person is like such a good like Jew or Christian or Muslim or Hindu or Buddhist or whatever in public. So they therefore are automatically wonderful people in private. And when like obviously when like people are accused, like found out of like doing horrible crimes, these people are like, oh, I can't believe it, he was a Christian or he was such a good Jew. It's like, why does that like cancel out the crime? This person obviously wasn't living up to the highest standards of his or her religion if they were like committing such horrible crimes. And the next one is number 15 in chapter 3. Everything is foreseen, yet freedom of choice is granted. The world is judged with goodness, and everything is according to the preponderance of good deeds. And so I love this one because it says obviously like free will exists, but there's still predestination. They exist alongside one another, and it's up to us to make the choice to do like good or evil. And also I mentioned that reminds me very much of the midway point of the Divine Comedy in Purgatorio 16, when it's like a discussion about like free will versus heavenly influences. And it's just something like really, really special to me because this sentiment is like found in like multiple traditions, even though if you're only like familiar with your own or you don't like realize many Christians really do have like free will and predestination existing alongside of one another. Now moving on to chapter 4, the first 3. Ben Zoma said, who is wise? One who learns from every person, as it is stated. From all those who have taught me, I have gained wisdom. Indeed, your testimonies are my conversation. Who is strong? One who subdues the evil inclination, as it is stated. One who is slow to anger is better than a strong person, and one who masters one's passions is better than one who conquers a city. Who is rich? One who is happy with one's lot, as it is said, when you eat of the labor of your hands. Happy are you, and it shall be well with you. Happy are you in this world, and it shall be well with you in the world to come. Who is honored? One who honors others, as it is stated. Indeed, those who honor me, I will honor, and those who despise me shall be degraded. And the me refers to God. And I should also mention it depends on your edition. Some of them number the mishnayot, the sections within the chapters, a little bit differently. So like what might be like number 3 in yours is like maybe like number 2 or number 4 or 5 in somebody else's. So obviously it just depends on which edition you're using. This is in the Tehillat Hashem prayer book, which again is Orthodox. I personally straddle the fence between liberal modern Orthodoxy and conservadoxy. This is a Chabad Lubavitch Hasidic sitter, but like I can go anyway. I've davened happily many times at Chabad services. So anyway, I'm getting on with chapter 4, number 2, which is one of my favorites. Then Azai said, run to perform even an easy mitzvah, and flee from transgression, for one mitzvah brings about another, and one transgression brings about another. For the reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah, and the recompense of a transgression is a transgression. And, this is again getting back to the like something that seems really like simple and basic that might be more personally meaningful to you or like more helpful in the long run than like the big like harder to do mitzvot. And so obviously it just depends on perspective in your life situation. So you never know which mitzvah is going to turn the tables for you and for the better. He used to say, do not regard anyone with contempt, and do not reject anything, for there is no one who does not have their hour, and nothing, no thing which does not have its place. And again, anyone can easily relate to this. And I'm moving on in chapter 4. The next one I listed out is number 16. Rabbi Yaakov said, this world is like an antechamber before the world to come. Prepare yourself in the antechamber so that you may enter the banquet hall. And that's like really nice, good advice. And the next one is number 17. He used to say, 1 hour of repentance and good deeds in this world is better than all the life of the world to come. And 1 hour of bliss in the world to come is better than all the life of this world. And obviously we can probably all know people who like weren't so like good or moral, etc. But suddenly when they were older, like maybe the arrival of grandchildren or just like an important event in their life turned them around, and suddenly they were like doing all these like wonderful good deeds and like going to like pray more often and just such like that. So you never know, like don't discount someone just because they haven't been living such a moral or positive life. That doesn't mean they can't can genuinely convert like towards the end of their lives, and that's like can be totally sincere. Number 18. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said, do not placate your fellow in the moment of their anger. Do not comfort them while their dead lies before them. Do not question them about the details of their vow at the moment they make it. And do not seek to see them at the time of their degradation. And many people can relate to this, particularly about don't comfort the dead. Don't comfort the mourner while they're dead is still before them, like something that might seem helpful to you is like totally insensitive or just not the right time, like, oh, she's in a better place now, or oh, thank God his suffering is over. Oh, that's so good. Your child won her battle with cancer because now she's in heaven. Like, you don't know how someone will react to those sentiments. They could be like totally offended and they do not share your exact beliefs, or even if they do, that might not be the exact right time to tell them something like that. And again, like, if someone is like really, really angry, obviously, like, it's good to try to break up a fight and diffuse a situation, but don't say, oh, I know you're angry now, but you shouldn't really be angry. Like, obviously, not when like fists are out and such with another person, but like, this person might have like legitimate reasons for being angry, and let that person, like, work through the anger and such, and don't just say, oh, you need to stop being angry right now and I can help you because I know better than everyone. And so just so many like wonderful things in this like Mishnah that people can relate to in number 4. The next one I put down is number 21. Rabbi Elazar HaKapar said, envy, lust, and honor-seeking drive a person from the world. And again, that's a very simple like thing people can relate to. There's actually very little Torah law in the Pirkei Avot, which is, kind of surprising for like the Mishnah and the Talmud. It's mostly just like sayings, like maxims of like these great rabbis from the past, which is something very interesting and unusual. And the next one is, I only put down one from chapter 5 and chapter 6 each. It's not that they're, like bad or I don't like them. It's just they're like much, much longer in the last 2 chapters of Pirkei Avot, and they're, kind of more like difficult to understand at first glance. You do need a little bit more like in-depth study to kind of like fully grok them. 7 things characterize a stupid person, and 7 a wise one. A wise person does not speak before one who is greater than they, in wisdom or in years. They do not interrupt the words of their fellow. They do not rush to answer. They ask what is relevant to the subject matter, and reply to the point. They speak of first things first, and of last things last. Concerning that which they have not heard, they say, I have not heard. And they acknowledge the truth. And the reverse of these characterizes a stupid person. That's like really, really like common sense. Like, who can't relate to that, And again, this isn't just for like Jewish people. You don't even have to have like religious faith in anything. It's just, basic like common sense, pretty much like anyone can like relate to and realize, oh, this was like relevant in my own personal life. And this is the very end of it, the number 11 in chapter 6. All that the Holy One, blessed be God, created in God's world, God created solely for God's glory, as it is stated. All that is called by my name, indeed, it is for my glory, that I have created it, formed it, and made it. And it says, the Lord shall reign forever and ever. And this is, again, I really, really do recommend reading this book. It's also sold separately in a fairly slim volume, also like just 6 short chapters. You don't have to like buy the full like prayer book to get it, but I would recommend people of all religions read it. And so thank you very much for listening. If you have not already, please consider liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. I really do appreciate seeing comments from my viewers because it's very difficult to remain like motivated for making videos when I have such a tiny viewership. So that would like help me like realize what maybe I'm doing wrong or what I'm doing right, or what you would like to see more of or less of. And so I really, really would like to see more feedback from my viewers, and particularly to get more subscribers, because if I get to 100 subscribers, I can finally begin researching and writing a series on the Decameron by Giovanni Boccaccio, which I've been wanting to do for a very long time. So thank you very much for listening, and I will see you guys again very soon. Thanks. Bye.